Hey BookTube, welcome to my channel, Jim Reads Too Slow. I'm going to run through the stories that I read for week 3 of New Worlds November, which of course is a month-long reading of shorter works of science fiction, 250 pages or less. It was created by Scott and Becky over at the Bookish Bryants. And of course, week 1 was extraterrestrial. Be conscious when they travel. They just can't stand it. So scanners have gone through a process that literally uh, severs their brains from all of their senses, all but one. They become basically like robots, but they thus are equipped to be conscious while they travel in space and pilot their vehicles. Uh, in the story, scanners are a respected caste. They have chosen this life for the good of mankind, and that's recognized. Then there are the Habermans. Now, the Habermans are miscreants, criminals who have this life chosen for them. They serve as crewmen on the spaceships. They're expendable. So if ever one of them starts to develop a mind of their own or starts to get uppity in some way, or whatever, the nearest scanner is perfectly within his rights to just reach over and kill them. They have these chest mounted controls, uh, and you just turn it up to 11. There he goes. So into this scenario steps a scientist by the name of Adam Stone. Now, Adam Stone has developed a way for normal men to travel in space consciously, without the pain and without having to undergo this physical mutilation. Well, the scanners, to put it mildly, don't like that plan, because if anyone can travel in space, then there's no necessity for scanners. Scanners then would live in vain. So uh, they have a big meeting. All the scanners get together, they take a vote, and their plan is to nip this whole thing in the bud by killing Adam Stone. Well, the hero of the story is a scanner named Martel, who attends the meeting cranched, or having gone through a process that temporarily reconnects him with his senses. He's married. He wants to spend some time with his wife. So he goes through this process and he becomes just like a normal man. And he's appalled by the scanner's plan. He does everything he can to get them to reverse their vote, to no avail. So Martel goes into the city to find Adam Stone and warn him of what the plan is. I really enjoyed this story. It's got some excitement. It kept moving along. It's an original. It really made me think. And I would recommend it. This was the first Cordwainer Smith story that I've read, but it's not the last. The second story I read was also by Cordwainer Smith, entitled The Lady Who Sailed the Soul. This was published in Galaxy magazine in 1960. Now, the lady of the story is Helen America, a girl genius, and the soul is her spaceship. So this is a romance story. It's about a sailor Mr. Gray No More, who pilots a vessel powered by solar sails. Now, he travels from his home, which is an Earth colony, to Earth. It takes him 40 years. But when he starts, he's a young man, 25 or so. His bodily processes have been slowed down for this journey so that he experiences the trip as a month-long affair. Wide awake the whole time, but his body ages 40 years. So he arrives on Earth an old man, a 65-year-old man, somewhere in that age group. So on Earth, he's a celebrity. He's a media darling, all that goes with that. Followed everywhere. He doesn't have a moment's peace. Meanwhile, this Helen America is born, grows up. She's an orphan, so she's lonely, has no real friends, but she's very smart. She's a great beauty, and she's also something of a celebrity due to the circumstances of her birth and her life. So she decides that she wants to become a sailor. She's got nothing to lose, really, the way she figures it. So Helen America and Mr. Gray No More, against the odds, they get together, and they end up falling in love. But Mr. Gray No More won't stand for any romance because he's a 65-year-old man, and Helen is a beautiful 25-year-old girl. And he's not, he's not a creep. He doesn't want her to throw her life away on an old man. Well, by this time, he, Mr. Gray No More, has become thoroughly disillusioned with life on Earth. And he's set, his mind is set on going back home. He's going to have himself frozen inside a pod. And there are hundreds of these pods that will be attached to the back of a solar sail vessel, and they'll be towed back to his home, this Earth colony. There he'll come out of this cryogenic process, and he will arrive back home without having aged any further. So he'll still be a 65-year-old man when he gets home. So yeah, Helen then goes through sailor training. She's going to be the first female sailor, and she's going to pilot this ship and all its passengers back to this Earth colony. I knew how the story was going to end almost immediately after I started reading it, but I still loved it. And it is true, as Michael K. Vaughan said in a recent video, it's the future, but it's the future 1950s. So there's that same sensibility, attitudes toward women, and their place, all of that. I would recommend this story. It's pretty good, regardless of that. Okay, so story number 3 was in the same 1960 Galaxy magazine as The Lady Who Sailed the Soul. Now, because of the New World's November hosts Voxer group, my senses have been perking up whenever I hear certain authors or see their names in print. And this one is an example. This is Condition of Employment by Clifford Simak. This story, like I said, in the 1960 Galaxy magazine, I think January 1960. This is about a rocket ship engineer named Cooper. He's stuck on Earth. He's going through the worst kind of homesickness. Because of something he's done in the past, no one will hire him. He's got to get back home to Mars, but he's stuck on Earth and he hates it here. Well, then he runs into a ship captain whose engineer has just run off. And this captain has to get a load of medicines to Mars where there's some kind of an epidemic going on. He doesn't care what this guy has done, just so long as he's a capable engineer. Doesn't care how disreputable he is. He just needs an engineer because they have to leave yesterday, right? So he signs on, Cooper signs on, and as the ship's engineer, and he nurses the engines that badly are in need of overhauling. He nurses them through this dangerous trip all the way to Mars, and they arrive safely. And Cooper then realizes what a godforsaken wasteland Mars really is. See, the homesickness is actually a drug-induced condition of employment, because no one in their right mind would face the beating of space travel, this grueling danger, without something like an overriding need to get back home, pushing them from the back of their mind. And at the end of the story, Cooper is once again homesick, but it's not for Mars. So this is another great story that I definitely would recommend. The fourth story I read was The Time Machine by Dino Buzzati, the Italian writer who wrote the Tartar Steppe, which I thoroughly enjoyed reading a few months ago. This was published in Italian in 1954. Buzzati has, I guess, one science fiction novel, which is rather forgettable, but a bunch of short stories like this one that are supposed to be pretty good. Now, The Time Machine reads like journalism. It's a description of a town where time moves very slowly compared to the outside world. People there live twice as long as they do anyone else. That is, until something catastrophic happens and the whole place just basically turns to dust. This is a really fast read. It's different, but I did enjoy it. Maybe not as much as some of the other stories that I read. This is the first of Buzzati's short stories that I've read, and I think maybe I should look for more, especially as science fiction. Okay, the fifth story I read is A Work of Art by James Blish. This was published in 1956 in Science Fiction Stories. In this future world of this story, there's a new medical specialty called mind sculpting. Now, a doctor, a mind sculptor, brings back to life the composer Richard Strauss. Strauss then is tasked with composing an opera. But first, he has to come to terms with what passes for art in this future world, the state of creating music at this time. They basically just reuse clips of existing compositions, and there's little real creativity at work. There are some things that look kind of familiar about this world. Well, Strauss does end up writing his opera, but as he's conducting it, he realizes that there's no real genius there either. And he's just reused all the same methods and tricks and whatever that he's used throughout his musical career. And he's really produced nothing new. The twist, though, at the end of the story makes it kind of sad for me. It's a really good story. It's also kind of a quick read, and I would highly recommend it. Finally, my sixth story, I read The Weapons Shop by A.E. Van Vogt. It was published in 1942 in Astounding Science Fiction. It's a reworked story, reworked from an earlier shorter story, and then it became the basis of one of Van Vogt's fix-up novels, which he is rather famous for. The repair shop owner is a conservative, very loyal subject of his empress. And he is incensed when a weapons shop suddenly appears in his village. He tries whatever he can to get it shut down, unsuccessfully. Then his son, who he has alienated and basically run off, in another town, takes out a loan in his name in the repair shop owner's name. And he's basically financially ruined. He has to take out a loan. He mortgages his shop. A competitor swoops in and buys the mortgage and puts him out of business. It's over for him. His mother-in-law suggests that his wife move back in with her and that he kills himself. Okay, so he's got no friends left. He's ruined. So yeah, he does. He goes to the weapon shop and he wants to buy a gun in order to kill himself. Well, from there, he's sent into the secret judicial system that's run by this organization of weapon shops. He finds out that his beloved empress is behind his ruin and the ruins of many others. And so he more or less joins this underground resistance. He gets his business back. It's relatively happy ending. Okay, this is a story that I think will appeal to Second Amendment people. This is a chain of gun shops that acts as a counterbalance against government overreach and corruption. You hear a lot about that in some sectors these days. I liked it as I was reading it. The more I think about it, though, I don't know how much I liked it. Okay, so there are the 6 stories that I read for week 3, classic science fiction. Now we're in week 4, which is robots and AI. I am going to be reading, hopefully, The Killer Thing by Kate Wilhelm. Several of us in the New World of November are going to be reading this, so we'll see how that goes. There's a couple other shorter stories that I'm looking at that if I can finish that, I'll jump into. I'll let you know. So until next time, till next week at least, have a good one, BookTube.